Okay, getting to know your key machine. So first of all is to know where it's plugged into. In case of an emergency, you can always turn it off. The next thing about it is to know how to calibrate it, how to adjust it. We're using the Silca Duo for this example, but a lot of key machines work in the same fashion. So here's your adjustment right here. You very rarely need to kind of touch that. Next thing is to know what type of cutter you've got on your key machine. This one here is a V cutter. I'm not sure if you can see it from there, but I'll just zoom in. You can see the shape of that key cutting blade. That basically tells us which direction we can go in. We can go in the standard direction because it has very small teeth and has a bit of an angle on this side. It allows us to go in the other direction just slightly when cutting our key. Next thing is if it's a automatic machine or semi-automatic machine. This one here has a worm gear to move the carriages, so that means it's semi-automatic. Some have a handle on the side, which means it's semi-automatic. If it was a manual one, you would simply hold it like this and then use your hands and your own pressure to push it backwards, left and right. The next thing is, the most important thing for key cutting is the jaws. Know which jaws you have and where they are and how to use them. Here you have them marked A, B, C and D, and to rotate them round you simply need to lift them and rotate them around like that. Also, they've got different grooves in each one, so it's well worth taking one or going right down close, having a look and identifying what grooves are on which jaw. The next thing is how to line up a key. Different machines use different shoulders and things like that. Most of the time you're going to be having a shoulder guide along the lines of this. So there's our shoulder guide here. We also use these grooves here to line up keys which use a tip stop as well. We can also use them on certain circumstances on other keys as well, but mainly for single and double-sided keys we'll be using one or the other. We'll be using a shoulder guide or a tip stop, which is a little tiny piece of metal which fits nice and snugly in these grooves and allows you to line up the key when you're pushing it in. The next thing is to know is about your machine is to know there is a fuse inside. Most of the time you do have a button on the side that you can simply push to allow the cutter and the buffing wheel to actually rotate. So you could have it on, simply push the button, and then most of the time you have a buffing wheel on one side, and then you could finish off buffing the key like that. Certain machines do have safety and easy triggers. What that means is that when you pull down, you push a button, and then you lift it up and it will start cutting. So you can have the power onto the machine, load the key, grab the handle, push down, push up, and it'll start cutting. On this particular machine it's not like that. You actually have to push a button on the side to get everything to start moving. So know your machine, know how it works, makes a difference, and also when you are cutting, keep in mind the safety factor, and we'll go through that now. Okay, so key machine safety. First one is know where your power point is so you can quickly and easily turn it off if you have to. Some people even go as far as putting in a little safety stop button, which is not a bad idea. I'll give you an example. Something along these lines could be mounted on the bench, probably in front, so that if anything was to happen you could quickly hit it and knock it off. Most people don't need that, but on saying that, if you follow the simple rules and procedures you'll be fine. So know how to turn the machine on, and when you do turn the machine on, go from the side. Try not to lean over the machine at any time. Try not to put anything near these cutters at any time. Always go from the side. With your keyboard, as you can see at the back here, it's not ideal to lean over the machine. Always work it from the side. Just keep in mind this cutter is here. Whether it's on or not, it's a good habit to get into. Before you start cutting, you're going to need safety goggles. Some machines do come with safety shields and shields, all sorts of shields that you can flick backwards and forwards, but in saying that, best just to use safety goggles. The next thing is to keep your machine clean, and to do that you can use a number of devices, toothbrush, brush and things along those lines. The reason I say to keep it clean and it falls under safety is because all of these little metal filings under here, if you can see, they're all extremely sharp, and if you were to get them in your eyes, in your skin, anything like that, you're going to be up for a lot of pain. So never leave it with a build-up of brass, because it can the wind can blow, it can get knocked, things can happen. So once a day, if you're key cutting in a shop, you should actually sweep it down. And that includes everywhere that you can see the brass. You get a paintbrush like this, you brush it all into the swarf tray, including the cutters, the jaws and everything, and also cleaning these ones out. Make sure they remain clean. That way I can clamp the key securely. If you don't clamp the key securely, what can happen is the key can fly out, or it can be a miscut. You waste a key, and it is dangerous having a key flying off. So keeping the key machine clean is highly recommended. Safety goggles are definite. The next most biggest thing is, if you're using a manual key machine, what that means is you actually got to rotate it. I'll see if I can simulate that for you. Okay, so if you're actually moving the carriage with your hand, always have the hand on the safe side when you're pushing and pulling. Okay, don't have your hand up here where it's close to the cutter. That's why they have handles like this, and you would be using it, supporting your hand just about here, and using that as your power and your guide to go left and right. This cutter is extremely sharp. When it's on, it will take a finger off. If it can cut keys and brass, it'll certainly take a finger off. So never load it while it's working. Always push the key machine over to a safe side, load it. Don't come from this side, come from this side. That's a safe side. Good habit to get into, just to make it nice and safe when you cut keys. And then once the two are loaded, then you would go in like this and cut your key. This being a semi-automatic key machine means that we don't have to hang on to the carriage. We can actually rotate a handle on the left, and that will allow the key machine to move left and right. Okay, so when you're cutting a key, this is the view you'll actually have looking over the top of the machine. And some key machines do come with inbuilt lights. I'll show you that. And sometimes you do need additional lights, which we've just turned on there, and we'll turn on another one here. And another one there. So you can see the difference it makes just by having overhead lights. If your key machine has some lights, good, but the more lights you have, the easier it's going to see, and the more guarantee you're going to have that you're actually cutting the key properly. And if you don't have lights, and you don't want to wire them up and all that sort of thing, you can simply buy a light like this off eBay, about $30, and you just clip it on the side and put it in a position where you can see the key cutting clearly. Good lighting is important so that you can see what you're cutting and make sure your cuts are accurate and you're doing a good key cutting. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to load a key and how to hold a key, and what a tip stop and what a shoulder stop is used for. Okay, so as you can see, the key machine is ready to go. The carriage is as far over away from the cutter in the safest position, and I'm going to be loading from this side here. Now the first thing is you need your jaws to be matching. The most common one for single-sided jaws is your simple A jaw. Now if you don't have markings on them, don't worry. The A jaw is simply just a shape like, like that. So the key just sits in there, okay? So it basically rides on the bottom right here and lines up from the bottom. So to do that, you would slightly back off your handle, put your key in like this, move it backwards and forwards so that you could feel the base of the key is hard up against the base of the jaw. Then you would slightly tighten it up. Actually, this key, our customer's key, goes on the side with the tracer. I'll put it in there, slide it backwards and forwards and nip it up. I do the same and make sure I'm using the same jaw. Put my blank key in on the side with the cutter, put it in there and just slightly nip it up. Now for this particular key, it's a single-sided key, so we're going to be using the shoulder guide, which lines up from this little lump right here. So we flick our shoulder guides up. A lot of different machines have different types of shoulder guides, but generally speaking, you should be able to enable them just the same and find your shoulder, which is located right here and right here. Now I've lined that up, I've put that in, and I can see on one side here my shoulder is touching my original key. Don't worry if it's either way around. Most important thing here is to have both keys at the same position. So because my shoulder's touching, I'll now move my blank key, I'll loosen it off, slide it a little bit forward, make sure it's flat in that jaw, and then just tighten it up. Tighten up just a little bit more, a little bit more. Now they're actually ready to go. I would flick down my shoulder guide and I can now start cutting. If you have some imported lock or strange lock, you can actually hold the key in this groove here. using one of the different jaws which has a V shape. So you would put the V shape in here. Not recommended for single-sided cutting keys, but if you've cut it once and it doesn't work, you can try that. So I'll go through it one more time. You put both keys in, lightly nip them up, flick your shoulder guide on. I can see now this time my blank key shoulder is lined up, but my one on the left is not. So I'd back this one off, slide it forward, keeping pressure on, keeping my finger down so it doesn't go on an angle. It needs to be straight and straight up against this jaw. So I'll show you what I mean by that. I can slide it backwards and forwards, and I can feel that the key is flat in that jaw. It needs to be flat. So it doesn't matter which one you line up, just as long as you line them both up with the shoulder, and most importantly, flick it back down. So that is how you line up a single-sided key. Now we're going to take them out, and we're going to line up a double-sided key. For this example, I'm using HYN7R. So it's a Hyundai key. Now for this one here, I have grooves in this key. You can see them there, probably not so clearly, but what I'm going to be doing is when I flip it over, I'm going to be finding the groove that allows the key to be 50% in, 50% out of the jaw. That way the cutter has enough room to go down as far as it needs to cut the key. When I look at the profile of the key, I can tell that I have a groove along this back edge right here. And if you look at where that groove is, sorry, is that better? You look at where that groove is, if I hold it in that groove there, it's going to give me a lot of room up and not so much room down. So I need to now loosen my jaws off, rotate it around until I find the jaw which has the V on the bottom. And likewise, if the key was in the reverse profile, you would use the jaw with the key on the top, with the V on the top. So I do the same thing. I put my key in, I lightly nip it up, and I also make sure that it's not rotating in the jaw. So if that was too loose, I could go like this. That's not good for anything. Then I loosen this side off here, rotate it to the corresponding jaw, which is jaw C. Now keep in mind this is a double courtesy key, so if I load it this way or load it this way, it doesn't matter, because we're going to be cutting both sides anyway, and both sides have to correspond. Now looking at this key just one more time, this key, there we are there, if you see this key here, it actually has a shoulder. Okay, it's hard to see, sorry. There we go. It actually has a shoulder, and that's what we'll be using to line the key up with. So we would line it up the same as we did on a single-sided key. We would flick our shoulder guide in, and I can see that it's touching on this side, so I would loosen this one off, slide it backwards, slide it forwards, making sure that both keys are on this same angle here. Okay, I don't want one down here or back up here. I want them both flat in the jaws. Then I would rotate this guide off, and now I could start cutting. That's lining up a double-sided key with a shoulder to line up from. We're now going to look at a double-sided key with a tip stop. I had some here just a moment ago. Here they are here. Okay, so this is a Toyota key, very common key. Here they are here. Now once again I'm going to look at the key and find out where I want to hold it. Now it's got a deep groove right here, deep groove right here, and a deep groove right here. Now I want to leave it enough room for the cutter to get in there, so I'm going to be holding it on this groove here, which means we want the jaw, the V-shaped jaw, to be coming from the bottom. So we're already doing that at the moment on jaw C. So I simply put my key in, feel that groove, that it's that valley in the key that I want to hold it on. I can feel that the V in the vise has actually picked it up, and I slide it backwards and forwards to make sure that it's actually on that V and it's in there nice and smooth. Slide it backwards and forwards once again. Now we have no shoulder on this key, so we cannot use our shoulder guides at all. These are called tip stops. You can use a piece of metal, they're nothing fancy, and with that we've got a number of ways we can do this. One, we could put it flat against our jaw and then slide the key up like this. Two, we could use the groove in the actual jaw as well, and then slide the key up to it. They're the most common, so I'm just going to do it that way. So I'm just going to put it flat against the jaw. You can do this with good quality key machines. Cheap key machines take a little bit more work to get it right. Okay. So what I'm doing there is I'm actually doing three things. I'm pushing this forward, making sure it's flat and in the groove. With my right hand I'm holding that hard up against the vise with my little piece of metal, and then with my thumb or my fingers I'm also turning the tightener so the key is actually tightened in position. So it does take a little bit of getting used to. Basically you just slide it in, make sure your tip stop is flat, and then just tighten it up. Give it a little nip, move your tool, tighten it, and those are ready for cutting. Once again, make sure this doesn't rotate. If it rotates, your key's going to flick out, and make sure they're both on the same angle here. Okay, you don't want them. You want them exactly on a 90 degrees from there and there. Okay, you don't want them on any other angle. So with these grooves on this actual key, key vise, you can see it here. We could actually use these tip stops and put them in like so. These are not the exact ones. If they were, that'd be a nice snug tight fit, because if they're not, you can get movement there. So you would want the original ones. If not, you would want to use a piece of metal which allows you to have a tight snug fit in that groove, and then it allows you to just come along, slide your key in from one side and then tighten it up just like that. I'll do that one more time. I'll do it on this side, that might be easier for you to see. Okay, so I just slide my key in, tighten it down, slide it backwards, forwards, make sure I'm in the groove is right in the key. Now I'm putting my tip stop in there, sliding it forward, and then taking it out and just tightening it. So that's how you line up a double-sided key using tip stop or end of the vise as a tip stop.